on Monday, 29th of September 2025 from the Walton Suite, Winchester Guildhall. The time is 6:30. My name is Councillor Brian Laming, Chairperson of the committee. This meeting is live streamed from the Council's YouTube channel, and recording will also be available after the meeting. Subtitles can be switched on, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. Can I remind members to use their microphones, and can everybody ensure their mobile phones are on silent? In the unlikely event it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all instructions given to you by our team. Can I welcome members to the public for this meeting? We will invite you forward when it is time to make your contribution. The agenda. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Langford Smith, for whom Councillor Godfrey is deputising, but I believe he's running slightly late, so he'll be here when he can do. And also, I believe that Councillor Wallace is running a bit late.
Thank you. Any declarations of disclosures of interest? Councillor Pett.
Thank you, Chair. I need to declare I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in respect of item 5 of the agenda due to being a member of the South Wales National Park Authority. However, as there's no material conflict of interest regarding this item, I have a dispensation granted by the monitoring officer that enables me to speak and vote on the matter.
Thank you. Right, Mr. Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. I need to declare a personal but non-prejudicial interest in respect of item 5, as I am also a parish councillor of Little and Hairstock Parish Council. However, I've taken no part in any parish council discussions or meetings regarding the matter, so therefore continue to take my part in consideration of the item. Thank you.
Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. Has anybody got any comments? If not, can we agree that these are accurate? Thank you. You want to put the introduction down?
Yeah, if you're interested. Say public participation.
Yeah. Public participation will be taken after the introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Right. Mr. John will introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Item 5 is the Community Governance Review Winchester Town Area Draft Terms of Reference. This report presents the draft terms of reference for the Community Governance Review of Winchester Town Area for consideration and approval by the Licensing and Regulation Committee. This follows the committee's resolution on the 16th of June 2025, which was report LR 594, to proceed with a CGR and establish a cross-party member working group to provide oversight and guidance during the initial stages. The working group's now met on 2 occasions to consider the scope and content of the terms of reference. This report presents the draft terms of reference as endorsed by the working group. The recommendations include an indicative timetable which, should residents support creation of a new parish council for Winchester Town, will be formed in April or May 2027. The timetable allows sufficient time to accommodate up to 3 rounds of consultation to refine, review any themes that emerge during consultation. Assuming the terms of reference are agreed, the intention is to publish the terms of reference and commence consultation during the week commencing 20th of October, with the initial consultation period leading up to shortly before Christmas. The results will be analysed by an independent agency. The primary focus of this CGR is to establish a parish council for the unparished town area of Winchester. When undertaking the CGRs, the council has a duty to create governance units that are both effective and convenient and reflective of the identities and interests of the community in that area. Community cohesion, size and populations and boundaries of the local community or parish are all relevant considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. And I invite Councillor Liz Wynne, your part of the public consultation. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be hopefully pleased to know that Littleton Harestock Parish Council actually support the proposals to make Winchester into a parish given the upcoming local government reorganisation, but we see no reason to incorporate Littleton and Harestock Parish in whole or in part into the new Winchester Parish. The reasons given in the terms of reference for the inclusion of Harestock is it would ensure consistent community governance across the entire St Barnabas ward. The parish of Littleton and Harestock currently ensures consistent community governance across the parish, and in any case, as we understand it, the town council ward boundaries are not yet set. Very happy to see the laudable intention to ensure a strong network of parish and town councils across the entire district. But one potential outcome, if Littleton Harestock Parish Council is split, could be the weakening of an existing network. We've like to make the point that we haven't been consulted so far on this, and certainly want to be consulted on the questions that are going to be asked of stakeholders. For example, in Harestock, people will be effectively asking or being asked to choose between remaining within the current parish or joining a new parish. And if people are asked to choose to join the new town council, it will need to be made very clear that they're going to be opting out of opting to leave the parish council that they're currently a part of. I think it's going to be very hard to make decisions based on the information that we've seen so far that's going to be provided. It's going to be very challenging as well for parish councils, because as we understand it, we're going to be have some responsibility to inform people about what the options are and what the future scenarios might look like. We haven't got complete clarity yet about the terms of reference about whether local people will be consulted if they live outside the areas that are suggested for inclusion in the town council. So if Littleton in Harestock Parish Council is split, that's going to have an impact on the funding and viability of the remaining part of the parish, which is Littleton. And we have had an assurance from the legal director that the entire area will be consulted for their views, as will the parish council itself, but that's not explicitly clear in the terms of reference. I'm very happy to note that viability is a criteria for determining any recommendation for a new parish. And the question I have is, will that criterion also relate to the creation of new parishes that are going to be created by splitting existing ones? And finally, Chair, the community governance review is being conducted by Winchester City Council. It will be overseen by Winchester City Council, and they will make the decision as to the outcome. And there are concerns we have heard and would like to be pondered about whether or not this lacks independent scrutiny. And that's all the more concerning because of the potential vested interest and links between Winchester City Council and any future Winchester parish. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I'm representing Headbourne Worthy Parish Council in my capacity of Chair of that Parish Council. I just want to start off by saying, like Littleton and Harestock, we have no in principle issue with the proposal to make Winchester Town into a parish as part of the CGR, and we welcome the CGR process. I don't want to go over a lot of the points made in relation to consultation by Littleton, because we also share some of those concerns. In the time available, I would like, though, to ask, in considering whether you will approve the terms of reference as drafted, if you could please bear in mind certain points specific to Headbourne Worthy and Kingsbarton in particular. You have said that you acknowledge that you're required by law in conducting review to take into account certain things reflecting the identities and interests of the community in the area, the effective and convenient of it all and the associated factors. Insofar as that applies to our parish, there are certain points that we need to make, regardless of whether Kings Barton and the W4 development do become part of Winchester Town, or indeed their own parish, or remain part of Headbourne Worthy. You suggest in the terms of reference that becoming part of Winchester City may help to align the governance and identity of these areas. But in relation to identity, we believe that already Kings Barton has got considerable community cohesion, the sufficient size and clear boundaries, so it's forming its own identity, and it might be compromised if it was absorbed into the wider city. And section 81 of the guidance does seem to acknowledge this possibility, with housing estates in towns being their own parish. In relation to governance, it's not entirely clear to us how Kings Barton would necessarily be better served by being part of a Winchester parish. For example, the commuted sums given by Carla we currently ring fence for use only for the benefit of Kings Barton. In a bigger parish, they might not so easily be kept separate, because when Headbourne Worthy Village is small, most of the time spent is in fact on Kings Barton, so in effect it's a functioning parish by itself. And another factor of concern is the viability of Headbourne Worthy as a very small parish if it were to be cut adrift from Kings Barton for any reason. So if Kings Barton does become its own parish, or if it and Headbourne Worthy remain as one parish, we think that the key point is that part of Kings Barton, that's in St Barnabas ward, should be brought into Kings Barton, so brought across into that parish to give it cohesiveness. If Kings Barton remains in Headbourne Worthy parish, then the parish council will need to have more councillors. This has already been flagged as a need by the parish auditor as a serious concern, and the terms of reference of section 17 seem to recognise this as a possibility. Finally, in seeking views from interested parties, we do consider it essential that the views of all residents in our parish and not just Kings Barton are consulted, and we'd like to be involved in the framing of those questions in as far as practicable. Thank you, Chair. Those are my submissions.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Brendan Gibbs. I'm the clerk of Oliver's Battery Parish Council. I won't spend too much time speaking to you. I just want to express the disappointment of the Parish Council about thus far being not consulted on any aspect of this process. The first we heard about it was when Councillor Brophy attended our meeting last Tuesday. But sadly, by the time he'd spoken to us and informed us about this meeting, the deadline for speaking registrations had passed by several hours. So we express our disappointment that up to now we've been left behind somewhat. Although we haven't had much time to discuss this, one of the questions that has emerged from an informal conversations with my parish councillors is that we'd like some explanation as to why what would reasonably be considered as a promotion of a town forum into an English civil parish appears now to be incorporating neighbouring parishes without explaining to anybody why or what thought processes took place in generating this. We are concerned if the incorporation of neighbouring parishes was to become the end result, we are concerned locally about certain planning and local plan aspects, because talking selfishly about this, Oliver's Battery has faced the promotion of an area of a parcel of land within its boundaries for many years without actually having any broad support from that community. And we fear if this process ends up in the absorption of neighbouring parishes, that a new city council, acting as a parish council in planning terms, will take a more benign view of this hostile promotion of this parcel of land. That's just one aspect of the concerns that we have. I'd like to say that the parish council chairman has spoken to me this afternoon and said that he would like the city council to ensure that the neighbouring parishes, including ourselves, are consulted more widely and have frequent updates between meetings to outline or to understand just exactly where this process is taking us. The final concern we have is it's not on your Appendix D with organisations to be consulted. There are a very broad number of organisations to be consulted, but we'd ask why, in this particular instance, all parish councils across the Winchester district need to be consulted. As some of them might just say, well, be careful what you wish for, but we're glad we're not part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to formalise things, Councillor Godfrey, like Councillor Wallace, any disclosures of interest?
Yes, firstly, my apologies for running a few minutes late. I need to declare that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in the items on the agenda due to my additional role as a Hampshire County Councillor. However, as there is no material conflict of interest regarding these items, I have a dispensation granted by the Audit and Governance Committee that enables me to speak and vote on these matters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apologies for my late arrival. I have no interest to declare.
Thank you. Right, next, could I invite Councillor Horrell?
Chair, good evening, and thank you for allowing me to address the meeting. We all know that local government reform and the introduction of unitary authorities has raised with us the issue of unparished areas in our district. Again, we all understand that it is the city wards that are currently unparished in the Winchester district, and we are supportive of the move to parish this area, particularly as we believe this action will assist us in protecting the historic status of the city, our mayoralty and coat of arms. My question for you, Chair, and your committee is why muddy the water on an issue where there is a huge amount of support by including cross-boundary matters? Where did the mandate come from to assess the suitability of governance arrangements for a number of those adjoining areas to the current city wards? Why are we seeking to review the Winchester town area and the shape and form that it will take? It seems to me rather like the current Labour government and local government reorganisation, this was not a clear manifesto commitment. Chair, if by doing the review, you're obliged to take into account factors such as the impact of any changes on community cohesion, which your report says, and in particular in Littleton and Harestock, where we have a happy and positive parish council working together, representing two communities. So why is Littleton not part of your consultation process, given the parish council will fundamentally change if Harestock residents leave the parish? The terms of reference do not explicitly say Littleton residents will be consulted, other than via their parish council. Why are you not committed to consulting with the residents of the Littleton village? They will be uniquely impacted by the decision as they have an interest in the review, unlike many listed as your consultees. I'm not really sure what Tourism South East listed in Appendix D will contribute to the review above Littleton residents. Chair, it seems to me fundamentally undemocratic that such an important group of people will be excluded from stage 1 of the consultation. And I question why these terms of reference do not allow for this. And I do hope this is an oversight on the committee's part and can be rectified. Chair, how are you going to ensure residents understand the full implications of a precept that may be applied to the new town council? In Salisbury, where a similar decision was taken following the formation of the Wiltshire Unitary Council, council tax increased by over 80% in the last 4 years. Understanding what the town council intends to do, which services it will provide, and the extent of its activities would be helpful to inform residents' choices. And I would recommend this is included as soon as possible in the consultation process. I do appreciate this is a multi-stage process and this may evolve as we go along, but clearly it will impact residents' views. So, Chair, I hope this evening you're still open to amending the terms of reference and that we can be really explicit about who is going to be consulted, particularly in my ward where we have a parish council representing 2 happy communities who work very positively and proactively together. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Horan. Councillor Porter, please.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I was on the working party for the second working party meeting, and I was there because I was acting as a deputy for Councillor Cremoyson, and we're both ward councillors for the area that includes Headbourne-Worthy. So I just wanted to bring out really the issue that we all wanted to see Winchester, the 5 wards of Winchester, as a council, whether it's a community council, a parish council, whatever it's going to be called. But I think that that is something that everybody agrees on. And we at in the Worthies, I think we've discussed at quite some length with the parish council in Headbourne-Worthy and touched on it with Kingsworthy as well, what the point of this community governance review was for them. And I just wanted to try and reassure people that I think that you've thought about that really well. So the priorities for the council relating to our ward was that there have been a lot of people who live in St Barnabas ward, who live in Kings Barton, who don't realise they're in St Barnabas ward. They think they're either in the city or they think they're just part of Kings Barton. So there is definitely a piece of work to be done there so that people understand where they live and what it would mean for them if they swapped. The second one is there's an opportunity for Kings Barton to sit in Kings Barton and in Headbourne-Worthy to see if there's any interest in becoming part of Winchester rather than part of the parish of Headbourne-Worthy Parish Council. So the people in Kings Barton actually face Winchester. They've got wards of Winchester either side of them, and some of them may feel that opportunity is there to be taken. And then the final stage is the opportunity for Kingsworthy and Headbourne-Worthy to think about whether they want to become the same parish or 2 different parishes. And you've talked about a multi-stage process, and I'm really pleased that that is going to be the case. It's not a one-off, that it's going to be something that you will be able to discuss as the results come in of the different consultations. I do think that actually other parishes will feel threatened, but it's also an opportunity to look again, for the public to look again at what this means for them and where they feel they sit. I feel that I was really pleased to hear that the consultation process isn't just a set of questions that Winchester City Council has come up with, but that I understand that a whole set of questions are going to be checked to make sure they're not biased in any way and that they are fair questions, and that the whole of Winchester, certainly in the northern parishes, will be asked their opinion. I'm also on the committee, on the the working party, there were representatives from the Badger Farm area and from the Littleton Hairstock area. And they've certainly been invited to the meeting. So I do think that we've made the effort to think about all of the places that might have an issue that needs to be addressed or thought about. It's slightly complicated for Kings Barton in that there was going to be a community governance review for that anyway, but the build out of that has been much slower than we expected, and we're still not at halfway through, but they have a very cohesive group managing lots of events. They have summer fetes and November the 5th events and all sorts of things, and so they are beginning to develop as a community on their own. So I do think the important part of this is that it is a 3-stage process, and I'm really grateful for that. But also I'd just like to mention about, and I know that this has been taken into consideration in the paper, although not explicitly, but it's been left clearly enough that there is the possibility to do it, that since Kings Barton started to build out, the workload of Headbourne Worthy Parish Council, which was previously a very small council with a very minimum precept, had a cohort of 7 councillors, and now Headbourne Worthy Parish Council are very laudable in the fact that they take the time to hold meetings in public to discuss Headbourne Worthy matters and Kings Barton matters on their own territory, in their own areas, and invite local people to come and take part. But as a result, this has led to a disproportionate amount of work, which the chairman pointed out just now. And I'm really pleased that that will be an opportunity to look at again. So I do sympathise with the residents who feel that doesn't feel that there's consultation, but I think that actually your plan is excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Becker.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everyone for coming along, giving up your Monday nights. I'd like to start by reassuring you that all we're doing at this meeting today is agreeing a set of terms of reference and a plan for consultations. Absolutely no decisions have yet been taken on the future governance for your parishes, for the town council. That's what we want to hear the public's views on. I have seen some publications from Littleton and Hairstock saying that there has been a decision that there will be a town council for Winchester. That's not true. That decision has not yet been taken. At this stage, we're firmly in listening mode. We want to hear the views from all of our residents about how they want to be governed in the future. I'd also like to remind everyone that it's a shame that Councillor Westwood couldn't be here tonight. He's on holiday, but remind everyone that the main focus of the community governance review is for the town. The other areas have been included because the boundaries of the town were set a very long time ago, and it seemed sensible to include these areas where there has been development recently to reflect the current boundaries and the current built up area, where residents may in fact identify more with living in Winchester than necessarily living in their parish, which is it's a slightly different thing. So it's about representing the views of the community. Turning to each of your comments, Councillor Wynne, I'd like to reassure you again, no decisions have been made about whether or not there will be a town council, and certainly whether or not Hairstock will be included in that. As I say, and I will keep saying it, we want to hear the views of the residents. Much more detailed information will be provided, as I did outline to you in an email. I outlined that the consultation material will outline what is being proposed, why it's being proposed. The terms of reference they are not the consultation material. There will be a lot more consultation material coming out. I think you confirmed, and looking at you, monitoring officer, that the residents of Littleton will be consulted. Equally, the residents of Headbourne Worthy who are not in Kings Barton will also be included, because the impact. No, it doesn't say that, but that will be part of the consultation. Excuse me? Can I have my right of reply, please? Thank you. The decision, I'd also like to reiterate that the decision for the community governance review is a full council decision. It is not a decision made by this committee. It is not a decision of cabinet. It's not a decision of a cabinet member. It is a full council decision at which members of the public are again invited to come along and to present their views. Turning to Headbourne Worthy, again, no decisions have been made about the future of Kings Barton and how that will be governed in the future. At this stage, what we want to do is hear the views of the residents of Kings Barton and of Headbourne Worthy about how they want to be governed in the future. And again, all parishes will have an opportunity to make their views heard. Turning to Oliver's Battery, I apologise that you feel disappointed that you weren't consulted. The parish briefings have been talking for some time about the future of the local government reorganisation and talking about the possibility of parishes coming together. So I can apologise if that view didn't come through to you, but we're very glad that you're here today. Again, I'd like to reassure you that absolutely no decisions have been taken and that parishes will be kept updated on the process through the normal channels. And I'm sure we will be keeping everyone updated about this process because we do want to hear from as many people as possible. In terms of being a planning committee, a planning authority, the town council, if it is created, just looking again at Mr. John, I understand won't be a planning authority, would it? That the town council would not be, it would not have a status any different from any other parish council. Councillor Horrell, again, what we're seeking to do at the moment is ask the views of residents about how they want to be represented in the future in this new world of government. That's why we're proposing this. No final decisions have been taken yet. As we've heard, Littleton residents will be able to engage in the consultation, and no decisions on precept have yet been made. That will be the subject of consultation and come out through this consultation process. But the final decision on precept of a new authority will be for the new authority, although this authority, if it is created, will set an initial precept for that first year. I'd like to thank Councillor Porter for her comments, and I'd also like to thank all of the members of the working group for their efforts in coming up with the terms of reference. I'd like to reassure the members of the parish councils who are here today that representatives from your wards were part of that working group. So please be assured that in the development of those terms of reference, your wards and your parishes were represented and their views have been taken very much into account in crafting the words around the ways that your communities have been described in the terms of reference. Thanks.
If I may just pick up on a legal point, it is actually a legal requirement under the Local Government Public Involvement in Health Act to consult all of the residents of affected parishes. That is picked up at paragraph 7 in the terms of reference. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Becker, would you like to introduce the report? Or
I think Mr. John's already done that.
Has anybody got any questions? Councillor Godfrey, I thought you might.
Let's start on that first question about consultation. Perhaps Mr. John can read out paragraph 7 of the terms of reference and say where it says that the residents of areas outside the St Barnabas area and outside Kings Barton are going to be consulted, because it does not say that.
No, it doesn't expressly say that in the terms of reference, but it does say the Act requires the council to consult the local government electors for the area. I mean, we haven't specified every area in that, but I'm happy to go on record at a public meeting and say we will consult the residents of those two parishes, not just the bits that are.
And therefore, can I ask that we note this as an amendment to the terms of reference to make sure the parish councils who've made representation today can be reassured in writing in the terms of reference that their residents will be consulted, including with in situ consultation and by notification by the City Council during this review process.
I'm happy to look at, I mean, I'm not going to redraft the terms of reference at this meeting, but I'm happy to look at them and incorporate that somewhere, yes.
In that case, then can we also include on that Badger Farm and also Shawford?
Yeah.
Because it affects that as well. Thank you. Sorry. Councillor Morris.
Yeah, to pick on Councillor Godfrey's point, I think item 11.4 makes it clear that the consultation will allow residents in all affected areas to comment on these proposals. And by any reasonable definition of affected, I would say that would include the residents of Lytton and other existing parish areas. So as Mr. Gareth, I mean, is my understanding of the word all affected correct in this case?
Yes.
Thank you.
No, I do not believe that all affected people will be consulted on based on that terms of reference. I, instead of living in South Wanston, will be affected by the changes in the council very slightly, but I certainly won't be consulted, even however slightly. But people in Headbourne Worthy parish who are not in Kingsbarton, and the people in Littleton Hairstock Parish Council will be significantly affected by any of the more radical changes, and they need to be explicitly consulted with.
I think Mr. John has already made it clear that they will be, hasn't he? Yeah.
And we did actually go through all that with in the working party.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I want to stick on this consultation piece. When Para 7 talks about the Act requiring local government electors for the area under review to be consulted, do you mean by that you will put a consultation on a website and expect people to look at it and then respond, or will you push the consultation to each of them? So will each household get a form to fill in or something like that? Which of the two is it? If I can ask a supplementary on that as well, please.
Certainly, yeah. All of the households within the affected areas will receive a mail shot as well. I mean, I wasn't proposing to go into all the details of the consultations at this meeting, but all of the results will be independently analysed. We've got a firm who will be dealing with that for us. There'll be paper surveys, telephone surveys. We'll be emailing out to residents that we have email addresses for, and there will be a mail shot going to all of the residential properties within those areas.
Okay, and the supplementary then is, given that splitting an existing parish will have definite effects on things like precepts and other aspects of their work, is it not reasonable that the whole of those parishes affected, where you are looking to split them, are consulted by that direct mailing consultation?
Yes, that's correct. And they will all be written to. It'll be the whole of those parishes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The most recent notes from the most recent working group meeting included a request based on Councillor Cremoyson's email about treatment for different outcomes for Kingsbarton, the Headbourne Worthy, Kingsbarton and associated areas in W4 area. And in the terms of reference now lists the three different options that can occur. But we only have one option for Littleton Hairstock Parish Council area, and that is take it or leave it for the Hairstock area. This is inconsistency. Does seem to be not inappropriate. Can we amend it so that we can include the possible outcomes from the following the consultation, just so each of the areas knows what may or may not happen when they're consulted?
Happy to take that one. So the difference between the two really is with Kingsbarton, it's currently split between a parished area and an unparished area. So there are sort of three potential outcomes here in that the unparished what we need to do is make sure that obviously Kings Barton is under the same area of governance. So be that its own separate parish council, remaining with Headbourne Worthy, which would include the unparished bit being transferred, or moving into a town council. Whereas you don't have that level of complexity with Littleton and Harestock.
Then one of the other parts of that note in that meeting following on from that was a request to include changes to the structure of Headbourne Parish Council makeup, the number of councillors, for instance, which I don't believe is included anywhere in the terms of reference. Has this now been ignored and will be excluded from the outcomes? And similarly, any other changes required by affected councils?
Thank you. No, that hasn't been ignored, and we believe there's enough flexibility in the process. Should the choice of residents be to remain with Headbourne Worthy, there is enough flexibility in the process for us to pick up, because the whole area remains in scope, to pick up increasing number of councillors.
Councillor Brightby.
Just want to sort of step back a level on this. Section 2.1 talks about the financial implications of undertaking a CGR, and specifically notes it's a resource intensive process. I think early on in this, the previous licensing meeting, I did question whether it would be worth talking just to the directly affected areas within the city and keeping that as a discrete piece, and then at subsequent date going back and looking at other areas that might be adjacent if that was relevant. And my impression was that actually quite rational answer I was given was that it's quite expensive to do these things many times over. And so I wanted to expand a bit more on what it actually means, that resource intensive process, the approximate cost and time of a process like this, which might explain why we might want to do this in one go, rather than kind of take many bites of this each time the boundaries change in future. Because I think that's at the heart of this, and we seem to be talking past each other as if this has all been done for some sinister ulterior purpose. Whereas I think it's quite pragmatic not to waste a huge amount of resource by doing multiple different consultations. So I'd like to understand a bit more what that resource looks like, and if that is an argument that holds water, it'd be quite good to understand that.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to pick up on that one. So there effectively there are 4 heads of costs associated with this community governance review. The first one are the costs of the consultation itself, and our best estimate on that at the moment is that the stage 1 consultation, which includes the mail shot that I've described, setting up some community events, etc., and instructing an independent agency who will be analysing the results, will be around £26,000 for stage 1 consultation. The stage 2 and 3 consultations, should they be required, we anticipate being substantially less, but it's difficult to put an exact figure on that at this stage. But obviously it's expected the issues that they would be dealing with would be less complex. So potentially you'd be consulting a narrower area of people, but anyway, the costs would, because we've already partly done that process, the cost will be a bit less. The second one is officer time. Now, at this stage, we haven't had to bring in any additional resource to deal with this, so officers are dealing with this as part of their ordinary day jobs. We don't time record and allocate time to particular projects. It's simply not practical to do that. No organisation does that really, apart from sort of top law firms and quantity surveying firms. Legal costs. We've spent around £4,000 to date on some advice on the mayoral and civic issues. This has been shared with 2 other authorities, so again, quite a cost-effective way of doing it. We're likely to require a further opinion on this, but these are costs that would be incurred irrespective of whether we were undertaking this CGR, because they flow directly from local government reorganisation. It's difficult to put an exact figure on that at this stage, because there will be transfer fees that we will need to pay to College of Arms, and sort of fixed statutory fees. We'll probably require a KC's opinion on some areas of this as well. So I can't give a precise figure on that. And the final head of cost is the cost of the first election for any parish council that is created. Now, again, it's a difficult one to cost exactly because it depends whether there are any other elections held at the same time, because obviously there's an economies of scale argument here as well. It's likely that the first parish council election would coincide with the first elections for the shadow unitary authority in 2027. So there'd be a significant saving in undertaking that at the same time. And the only additional costs would be limited to printing, additional count staff required for having an additional count, and a few other bits and pieces. But essentially, providing it wasn't a standalone election, the costs would be relatively low. They're the main areas of cost that we've identified as part of this process at this stage. There will be other things that arise, but they're the four main ones. Thank you.
Just following on from Councillor Brophy's point, my concern was always that this additional workload may endanger the actual process of establishing a town council, if that is what is decided. As I understand it, the consultation timeline is not affected by whether or not other parishes are included. So can you reassure me that it does not affect the viability of setting up a town-based council?
I've got no reason to suspect that. We've got enough resources to deal with the majority of this in-house currently, and as you've just said, consulting additional parishes do not add to the timeline. So yeah.
Can I just clarify another point, was that if we do this as laid out, that enables the parishes to join or not join. If we don't include them at this point, there'll be some considerable time before we could do it and look at it again.
That's correct. I don't envisage there would be the resources to consider this again during the lifespan of this authority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just also like to clarify that we're not at this stage asking parishes themselves directly if they want to join or not join. It's a decision, or it's what we're doing is we're seeking the views of residents about how they want to be governed in the future. The parishes will of course have the opportunity to respond to the consultation separately, but we are also looking for the views of the residents. I just wanted to clarify, Councillor Lehman, because you did say if it was for the parishes to choose if they were in or out. So I was just wanting to clarify that it's not for the parishes to choose if they're in or out.
I was
It's
referring to parishes
residents.
as the residents.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Wallace.
I want to keep going on the costs thing. Can I just get that? I just wanted to confirm. Are we saying we don't know how much this process is going to cost, and yet we're trying to get approval at this committee to go ahead with it, but without knowing how much it's going to cost?
Yes, we can't put an exact figure on it at this stage. No, that would be very, very difficult to do. I mean, we don't, like I said, there are too many variables in this. We don't know how much the legal fees are going to be. We can't be certain how much a first election will cost, given that we don't know how many other elections are going to be held in that year.
But also what we're doing in this meeting here is simply agreeing terms of reference and agreeing to go out to consultation. That is the decision you're taking today. It's not about whether or not we're going to establish a full council.
Yeah. So the consultation itself is estimated to cost 26k, plus legal fees, which we're not quite sure on, and officer time, which isn't recorded. So it is adding up the amount of effort, time and effort and costs that we're doing. And I don't get me wrong, I think this, I think it's really important we do this, but I am frankly a bit shocked that I'm sitting here today without a cost breakdown. I mean, back in when the town forum last sat on the it's back around May, I think, time, we said we'd get further detailed information regarding the costs, and we'd get that in June of this committee, and we didn't get it in June, and then we get told we get it here, and we haven't got it here. And
I think Mr. John has explained why it's impossible at this point to provide a detailed breakdown of costs. This isn't a building project where we can quantify the cost of each brick. There are different variables at every stage, and those variables make it incredibly difficult to properly identify what the costs are going to be, and any attempt to do so I think would be misleading, frankly, at this point. But again, what we are asking you at this committee is to go to consultation. that is the decision for you today.
And if I may just come back in terms of the legal costs, they would be incurred irrespective of whether we were setting up a new town council at this stage. So they're incurred as a result of local government reorganisations. We've got to preserve the city status and the ancient mayoralty status of Winchester, irrespective of where we go with this.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get my head around this. So we're trying to understand we can't get exact costs. I get that. I appreciate the point. We should have a feel for what the ballpark costs of doing this are. And I know that's quite a difficult thing for officers to answer. Also, that might be, but we do need to have a kind of feel for how much this is going to.
I mean, I've done my best to do that. I mean, I can tell you what we estimate the consultations to cost. Officer time is incredibly difficult. I mean, we don't cost each individual job that an officer undertakes in local government. That's just not practical. It's like I said, it's been absorbed as part of business as usual at this stage. If we were recruiting extra staff to deal with it, I could give you a costing on that. As far as elections are concerned, there's an economies of scale argument with that. Some years we'll have 3 or 4 elections, so the individual cost of each one is obviously a lot less. If this was going to be undertaken as a standalone election, I could give you a rough cost on that, but it's unlikely to be given the timing of it. So the cost would be considerably less.
Okay, well, this is clearly as far as we're going to get. However, I did have a kind of follow on from that. I mean, we said we're paying for this out of the transitional reserves. Why is the whole of the Winchester district paying for Winchester City to be parished? Why shouldn't a chunk of this be coming from the Winchester Town Council account?
Town Council doesn't exist as a separate body. I mean, this is I mean, the rest of the area is already parished. So this is about creating I mean, as a matter of law, the cost falls with the principal authority in any event.
The government isn't paying for LGR. We're paying for it. So why? But here we're saying Winchester Town Council accounts are reported separately in the annual reports. We have Winchester Town Council accounts. I know that they sit kind of as part of the council, but they are reported separately at the Town Council. And there are specific costs that are incurred that go on the Town Council. So why are we saying all of this is being borne by all of our residents rather than split with the Town Council? Because I do appreciate that some of the costs should be, like we talked about the mayoral thing and legal bits, it would be right and proper that they're split, but it doesn't sit with me very well that it's all going across all of our residents.
Councillor Godfrey, please.
Thank you. My recollection of responsibilities of this and several other committees is that we don't have any budgetary control, and therefore we can spend until somebody tries and stops us, or actually stops Mr. John. But yeah, my concern with the costs is that during workshop 1 of the working group 1 of the preparation for the terms of reference, we discussed how counter views would be put during the review, and you heard this evening 2 or 3 very strong voices expressing concerns contrary to the aspirations set out in the by the town forum and by members of the administration. How are we going to support a proper informed decision to be made by our residents and by other stakeholders if, as we were told in the working group, the parish councils and others would have to deliver and fund the opposing view themselves. And so it's parish councils against the city council. Who's got the biggest budget to win a review? Or is there going to be a balanced pros and cons text document or series of text documents issued as part of the consultation?
Councillor Godfrey, this was actually discussed in quite some detail at the second meeting of the working group, which you didn't attend. So that's a shame because we did.
A point of information.
We did discuss
a point
it.
of information. I was not invited to the second meeting, and so I was not able to attend.
I find that very strange.
I also find that very strange. Everyone else managed, well, other than Councillor Bailey Morgan was able to attend. So Councillor Cremwayson sent Councillor Porter as his deputy. So I don't know what happened there. We did have a meeting and I understand that you were emailed subsequent to that meeting telling you what had happened at that meeting and inviting your views on the terms of reference. So any issue about not being invited or not the validity of that meeting have not been raised with me. You could have emailed me to tell me that you had not been invited. So I'm shocked to hear it at this meeting here today. Regardless, just to clarify, these are not the aspirations of the Town Forum, nor of the members of the administration. These are options to be put to the public, to give them information and to let them have their say about how they would like to be governed in the future. The information from the council will be neutral. It will give people the information they need to be able to make an informed, express an informed view about how they would like to be governed in the future. It is not, it cannot be a political document that sets out all of the benefits of this and none of the disadvantages. It will be, as all council documentation is, neutral.
So can I be told what commentary will accompany the questionnaire? Because the draft we have presented during August on the working group gave very little commentary in either direction, either why we should do it and why we should not do it. Are the pros and cons not going to be explained?
I thought that the whole point of the consultation questions was that they are neutral and they're asking people's opinions. And that's an open question all the way through.
Thank you. Yeah, that's correct. And the questions are also being overseen by an independent agencies who will be helping us to analyse these as well. So yes, they are drafted in very broad terms.
Just to add, we have elected to go for having the agency review the responses received, particularly because we don't want to read them with any final view in mind. We wanted them to be read with a completely neutral by a neutral party who won't be reading in what they want to read in, who is a step back from the authority, because we want to have that neutral understanding of what the representations made actually say.
It's supposed to be clear and transparent. That was the point of the meeting. Councillor Pett.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I certainly agree with Councillor Becker. All we're being asked here is to agree terms of reference for a consultation, nothing more. The only cost we're committing to is the cost of that consultation, as I understand it, which you put at around 26k. There will need to be council's opinion, I'm sure, on lots of things through LGR, but this consultation in particular, I don't see as being one of them. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I don't envisage incurring any additional legal costs as a result of this first round consultation, though.
Okay. My only further point then is that clearly it is right to go out and ask people's views of how they wish to be governed. It would seem sensible to me to make the point to them when eliciting their views that there are costs to everything in this life, and whichever solution, be it status quo or something different, there will be figures associated with that. Some options may prove to be unaffordable. To what degree will that information be contained in the consultation?
At this stage, which is the first round consultation, it's about establishing the principle of a town council. The views on the precept will be a function, I suppose, of how many of the geography of the area. I mean, at this stage, we don't know how many of these how many of the additional areas potentially are interested in joining. We also don't know what assets are likely to be transferred to any town council, so it's difficult to consult on that at this stage. And there is also a sort of pseudo precept associated with the town council area, even at the current time, which is just under £100 for a Band D.
I suppose what I'm seeking an assurance of is that somewhere in the consultation paperwork, it will make clear that all options are not cost neutral.
Yes, we can look at that. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
We've been talking a lot about this. Well, it's been stressed here that we're actually looking at views of residents, and that's very important. We also have a list of different stakeholders and different groups locally that would be consulted. I'm interested in understanding a bit more about how those different stakeholder views and residents' views, and also the views of parish councils, are weighted relative to each other. I'm also quite mindful of the need for a certain amount of humility in it, as in, I think many of us in this room are probably quite unusual in the sense of we take a very different view on some of these organisational issues than residents do, and how we kind of work our way around weighting those I suppose the volume of the views of the people who have the most skin in the game versus the actual majority of residents who might actually be the silent majority. Maybe that's just me as a relatively young councillor, new councillor to local government, knowing how few people actually understand what we do in rooms like this. And I think maybe that's the viewpoint that might be quite silent within this process if we're not careful.
I think you're absolutely right. These bodies will be invited to provide comment, and when we are looking at the responses received and considering what they say, they will be given all due weight. But as you say, again, we also need to represent the views of the residents, and sometimes smaller excuse me, parishes and smaller organisations may not necessarily represent the wider community. I think we all know in all of the areas that we represent that there are some very civic-minded people who give a lot for their community and express a view about how their community is organised and should be run. But we don't often hear from lots of other people in the community. So what this process allows us to do is to listen to both and to consider both voices from those communities.
May I ask a supplementary? Are there any, I suppose, best practices we've adopted from previous consultations that might be drawn into this? I'm thinking on certain other consultations have actually brought on board workshops to actually get people who don't typically respond to these different demographics, who don't typically respond to questionnaires from their council, to get involved. So we've seen that in I think some of the planning issues in terms of redeveloping quarters of the city where we've actually workshopped things. Is there a kind of a mechanism to proactively go out and seek views?
I think we'll be looking for all novel ways of getting people involved and for them to express their views. We've had success in the past, particularly with the recycling survey that we did using social media. We got thousands of responses, far more than we get through traditional paper-based consultation exercises. So we'll be looking to use new modern ways to reach as wide a range of people as possible. I wonder if we can bring up Mel. Sorry. Who is leading on developing the consultation.
Good evening, everyone. Just really quickly, my name's Mel, and I work in the communications team at Winchester City Council. I've been involved in the kind of process of where we're at the moment. As a communications professional, it's really important that everything we put out is neutral. And we absolutely recognise that there were some gaps within our resource, and that's why it was important to get that expert advice. So certainly within the questionnaire and the analysis, that does need expert advice, and so that's why we are looking at that. In regards to kind of targeting kind of challenging areas, with this independent company, we have looked at some targeted like telephone resource, which we haven't committed to, but actually if it was felt that that would actually bolster our response rate, we've got kind of tactics to bring in if that was needed. So hopefully that helps.
Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Yes, it's slightly a follow on actually from this the question that Councillor Brophy asked. I'm put in mind of when we started the last review of the local plan, it was during COVID, and that introduced a whole lot of different processes of asking questions, and it wasn't the normal people turning up and looking at exhibitions and writing comments. It was a lot of it was done via the internet and pulled in, whether accidentally or deliberately, quite a different demographic, a lot of younger people, and obviously things like that would be a useful thing to imitate.
I was just going to say absolutely. So our corporate Instagram channels, our Facebook, so all our corporate socials are heavily involved in our comms plan. So they will be absolutely part of the process. So yeah, so that we do also look at best practice. So what other councils are doing and seeing actually, so we're part of a network of kind of comms people. So we're always taking ideas and trying to reach certainly those that don't proactively engage with us.
We're also looking at running a range of roadshows in different parts of the town and parts of the different parishes to make sure that we're also seeing people and capturing people who may not necessarily choose to engage online, choose to come into the council, but may, while they're going around their daily business, may choose to express their views. Councillor Godfrey, I'm sorry, others can't hear you when you're speaking.
The life you've stopped to listen to, you should listen to me more. What I'm concerned about is the schedule of those communications that we've just been talking about. When will that schedule be known and shared with other interested parties, such as the parish councils, who will want to be involved in informing the debate with the pros and cons as it affects residents, which is not going to be made available through the City Council's questionnaire.
Those materials are still being developed. Mr. John, do you want to update on the table for that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we are looking at scheduling those currently. So we're out consulting with various agencies for space on those, and I expect the list of dates on those will be published towards the end of October. I'm not certain on dates. I'll be liaising with Mel on that, but thank you.
Now, we are consulting on the terms of reference on this. Councillor Morris.
Yeah, just regarding the consultation of residents, and picking up, actually following on from Councillor Brophy's point, will the residents' location be noted? Because whilst I welcome the views of residents of Littleton and Headbourne Worthy, and they are going to be indirectly affected by this decision, I would say that the people living in those areas, such as Harestock, are more directly affected by any outcome, because they're the ones who are potentially going to be paying a different precept or getting different services as a result. So can I just be clear that that will be noted, so that when we look at the final makeup of what residents think, we can see if everyone in Littleton wants one thing and people in Hadstock want a different thing, we can go, okay, that's an interesting result, and draw our own conclusions.
Absolutely, everyone will be asked to provide postcode data, so we're able to pinpoint where the responses have come from and what they say.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. Something Councillor Brophy mentioned, I think, is well worth picking up again, because we mentioned in our last meeting back in June and in the working group discussion back at the end of July, was decision making and the reliance on feedback by the affected groups. And the assurance was given at both the, our previous licensing committee meeting and during the first working group discussion that the views of residents in each of the affected areas would be a significant decision-making or basis for decision-making. But I don't see that in the terms of reference. Is that a thought that can be corrected?
I think that was covered in the answers that we've already had, Councillor Godfrey, where it's going to be postcode identified. And we can sort it out from there.
It is not.
Would you like to make a comment, Councillor Baker?
Again, this was discussed at the second working group, which I've just confirmed you were indeed invited to. I've got the invitation here on my laptop, so you were invited. It took place on the 8th of September at 10:30 in the morning. No response was received from you, but you were certainly invited. In terms of the weighting given, in every consultation, we don't necessarily afford a response, a number, a numerical weight, but we do consider the views of others and how they are affected by a particular decision in different ways. And so that will come forward, and these things will be taken with a holistic view and with looking at the totality of the responses received, while also looking at particular areas and what the views of particular areas want. Obviously, the views of the people of Harestock in respect of the future of the governance of Harestock will be given priority, but it's very difficult, and I wouldn't want to say in the terms of reference how numerically we assign those values, because that's not how a qualitative set of responses can be assessed. We don't assign numbers, we don't assign weights, we look at what people have said, we look at the tone of what they've said. It's a qualitative, not a quantitative assessment.
But you would accept that if a significant proportion of Harestock residents who did respond indicated that they did not wish to be part of this new town council, then that would be a decisive factor.
It would be a factor, certainly. Would it be decisive? I think it would be the subject of further consultation and further exploration of what those views are. We've spoken today about this not being a single consultation process. This is going to be an iterative consultation process. So if, as an outcome from this consultation, a large proportion of people say, yes, we want to join a town council, future consultation will explore that further and talk about the potential impacts of that. It's not a single yes, no, in, out. There are issues to be explored, and that's why it is that ongoing consultation process.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. Councillor Morris, please.
Thank you. This is the Morris and Godfrey show. I'm enjoying this. We've heard from various members of the public speaking that they have concerns about the financial impact on the parishes, particularly Littleton. Can you confirm that any parishes will have the opportunity to submit a financial impact assessment as part of the consultation, should they wish to?
Absolutely, as part of their consultation response, if they wish to provide that level of detailed information, absolutely, we would consider that as part of their response.
Thank you, Councillor Pat.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to suggest that we need to really focus on the question that we're being asked this evening, which is to agree the terms of reference of a consultation, not how we're going to assess the data that consultation delivers up to us. That, I'm sure, will be the subject of further deliberations, quite lengthy deliberations downstream, but that's not the subject of this evening's debate, is it? What we're here to do is look at the terms of reference for the consultation outbound, as it were, not what we're going to do with the data when it's inbound.
Thank you. I totally agree with that, and we just get a bit sidetracked this evening. Councillor Brophy, please.
Actually, with regards to what Councillor Pett was just saying in terms of getting back to what's in front of us right now, looking at the roadmap, at the end of this stage 1 consultation, there would be a section in December, May where submissions are considered. And I think this goes to the heart of maybe what Councillor Godfrey was saying and other people are saying in terms of what the relative weighting of these inputs would be. I think we've already seen in the discussion tonight that people can use their perceptions of what those outputs might be before they've even happened to hypothesize certain scenarios and then come up with their own versions of it. The heat in this room already strikes me that a certain amount of transparency would be important to avoid this, these various fantasies being constructed. Let's say, during that December-May submissions considered process, then, do we have any intention of publishing the initial findings or giving any of that quantitative data back? So therefore, people could plainly see that their neighbours down the road felt different to them and that it wasn't necessarily, any given party around this table making any decisions, but it was actually a response of what the results would be. How are we going to surface that things in that submissions considered stage?
Thank you. So once that report has been prepared by the independent agency who are doing that, that will come back into the working group. And depending on, I suppose, how definitive some of the views are that come out of that, it will then feed back into another licensing committee meeting. I mean, I suppose it's difficult to say at this stage because we don't know which way that's going to take us. But
so could we agree to have some of that information presented back at a licensing committee meeting so it can be seen in public and the papers can be assessed?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just for information, Councillor Becker, that invite was sent at 10:27 on meetings which started at 10:30 on that morning. The first time I saw it. The issue of what's in the survey came up at our meeting in June, and at that time, Councillor Becker said that the survey questions, what was going to be consulted on, would include what services the stakeholders, residents want. But nothing is mentioned in the terms of reference about the services that might be required, and were not included as one of the questions in the draft survey that we were was shared with us. Can I be reassured that this will be corrected before the next the actual survey is developed? Because it's it was an assurance given by at the last meeting.
I'd just like to reassure you, Councillor Godfrey, that what was sent out with that meeting invitation in terms of questions were purely meant to be indicative. They were not in any way meant to be the final information nor the final questions that were going to be asked. So I wouldn't, they were to give a flavour of the types of questions that may go forward, but they were not in any way meant to be the final questions, because as Mr. John has said, we have external advice coming on what those questions will be.
thank you. Yes, that's correct. We've got a comms team and a professional agency engaged in that. We're not asking licensing committee to write the terms of consultation.
My question was, will the question about the services that people want be included in the survey?
I think the whole point of the survey was just to see what people's reactions were. we can start looking at the detail at a later stage, because we're not having just one consultation, it's several. And we're trying to stick to what the recommendations are in this report.
Yeah, just question for Gareth regarding Appendix C, the electorate and household data that's provided. Whilst I'm sure all this information is absolutely correct, would I be correct in my reading that the residents of Harestock, who I value very highly, have been counted twice as members of the St Barnabas Board and as members of Littleton Harestock? Would my reading of that be correct?
They'll have been counted in their capacity as residents of a WCC board and separately as a parish council.
I think they're very important residents. It's good that they deserve to be counted twice. I think they made no complaints about this. Thank you.
Councillor Brophy.
I'm just trying to avoid it being the Morris and Godfrey show, so I had to get my numbers up. Point 12, item 12 on page 23 of the report, I think cuts to the heart of what several of the representatives from the parishes have said, which I think are really important points. So I'd like to stress, which is maintaining the financial viability of the parishes that might be affected, that aren't in the town area, that might be, say, divided. The wording of item 12 here is the council is required to ensure that any new parish created is viable, its governance arrangements will be effective and convenient. The assessment will be the ability of a new council to be set a sustainable precept. So there's an emphasis on the sustainability of any new parish. Could we modify the wording of the terms of reference to make sure that the existing parishes are also their sustainability respected as well? Of course, if it's covered elsewhere in the document and I've missed it, then forgive me.
Would they not be considered a new parish?
Yes, they'd be new parishes as well.
Therefore covered by the viability rules.
Yeah.
Good point. So any parish that might be subdivided or affected would technically become a new parish, is that correct?
There's the potential to create, I suppose, a new parish in respect of Kings Barton as well here. I suppose that's the one that's got the option. If it were an existing parish that were losing area, that parish would still exist. If an entire parish council were to be absorbed, then that parish council would cease to exist entirely if the whole land area was taken in.
So I suppose to reiterate my question, would we be able to modify this section about viability to say that any existing parish should also be sustainable and viable as well? Because I think that's one of the, important concerns that was raised.
Yeah, I mean that as sorry, my colleague is pointing out, that would be a decision for those parishes that, or sorry, the residual area of those parishes that are left when setting their own precepts. Consideration will be given to the impact on parishes that potentially have any, I suppose, lose any land as a result of this. But yeah, but that's outside. Sorry. No.
I mean, if I can chop, this is why I asked the question that parishes will have the opportunity to submit financial viability statements so that we will know, we'll be able to judge from their own accounts whether they regard themselves as being viable in a new situation or not. And that'd be really useful information to have, certainly. And if it turns out from looking at their accounts that they would not be viable, that would certainly be of great concern, I would say.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 12 of terms of reference deals with the topic of viability. In that section, it refers to viability of the new parish councils. But when we're splitting existing parish councils, does the city council have responsibility as part of its governance process to consider the impact on the viability of
Councillor Godfrey, sorry, that's the question we just answered. We literally just, that was Councillor Brophy's question.
What are you going to do about it? Because I didn't.
Well,
hear an answer
we've
to that.
answered that question, Councillor Godfrey, and I think that is in that for that particular point. Any debate? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, Chair. I have to admit, I'm approaching this process as the ward councillor for Badger Farm and Oliver's Battery as somewhat sceptical of the need for my residents to be, use the loaded word, subsumed into a larger city entity, simply because you'd think, well, would the council tax precept for an area as grand as the city be far higher than what an ordinary residential area might be? Surely it would just inherently involve an increase in council tax precept. So that's where I started from, and then obviously you look at this and you see that the viability of those new entities would be the precept is divided by the council tax base. And actually, if you have a larger area, you could have a larger base, and therefore it could actually bring things down. It's a very difficult thing for people to understand in advance of what those implications could be. And I think it also becomes important that ultimately, we have members of parish councils who've taken their time to be here today. Their responsibility is to set those precepts in a way that is responsible and sustainable for residents. And that responsibility won't change regardless of which body it is that's setting those precepts. And I think that's something we should be very mindful of, that moving forward, this wouldn't necessarily be a net negative for residents. It's very easy to assume it would be. But my concern is that even trying to articulate that sequence of thoughts in my head and put it to you, is that some of this stuff will seem very opaque and very difficult to, I suppose, be salient to people, in the same way that if you're asking people about recycling plastic pots, you get a very high level of response, a very high level of comprehension of the questions you're asking. And I think here it will be very difficult to ask the questions of people, many of whom who frankly don't know what a parish is. And I think this is really important to stress. There's a lot of people who simply, I've been asked as a city councillor, oh, so you're from the parish then? No, I've also been asked if I'm the MP, which I find astonishing. And I've been asked that by people who are, consultant surgeons who simply just don't have time for this. So I think this is going to be a very complex process to engage people in. But I think the point I would make is that I think maybe we need to approach this with a certain level of humility, to acknowledge that the organisations we're part of, such as the City Council, which will cease to exist fairly soon, and also the parishes that we work with, may not be the best entities to represent people. Those will always change, and I think it's ultimately down to residents to decide. I think it's going to be very important for us to find a way to make these decisions and these responsibilities of these decisions, understandable to people. I think it's going to be a difficult process, which is why I think the iterative nature of the consultation in either 2 or 3 stages is very important. So I think ultimately, I think this. I would agree with this set of terms of reference. I wasn't part of the working groups, but what I've seen here seems very responsible. I think if people come back as a whole and respond hugely in Badger Farm and say they feel like part of the city rather than part of Badger Farm, then who am I as a councillor of Badger Farm and Oliver's Battery to say otherwise? I think it's important to listen to people, and this seems a sensible way of doing things. Apologies for rambling.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. I'm very much in favour of this success of this community governance review, as requested by the town forum. It is important that the residents of and other stakeholders in the unparished areas of this city have a local representation after the city council is removed, and being represented by a relatively distant councillor representing the new unitary authority, I think is not satisfactory on dealing with day-to-day matters which parish councillors deal with on a regular basis. So I think we must press ahead with the terms of reference as set down to deal with the unparished areas. However, we have got to be very cautious about how we impinge on an existing and very effective governance network which sits around the unparished areas to try to impose a new structure into residential areas where there is already a parish council providing local governance is going to cause more confusion and more concern. And so during this review, we must be very clear what we're trying to achieve. And in the terms of reference today, the rationale for making any change in those parished areas is very unclear. And I do believe we need to do better with that. Councillor Becker's assurance that the decisions will be made in a logical fashion based on all the feedback coming together also went on to say, but we'll ignore the majority of people who say something which is against the interests of a group. That's what she said. I don't think that is right either. If our residents do not want something, we must adhere to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. We all want to see the Winchester Abbot Town Council, the 5 unparished wards, definitely. The controversial part is where the changes are being considered at the city borders, and we all know that. We all recognise that. Parish councillors are fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I've got 12 parishes in my area, and people that give up their time to support their local community do a wonderful job. And you know, they spend a lot of time of their own time. They're not paid, and they all do it because they want to support their local community. And I think everyone working on this exercise needs to recognise that when parishes are being considered to be included within the town, I think we have a responsibility to work very closely with the parish councils who are going to be affected on that. It is a reasonable question to ask whether, you know, residents want to be seen to be part of the Winchester town or stay as a parish, but you know, we need to recognise the efforts that our parish councillors do. They do a fantastic job all over our area. Really pleased to get the most important thing for me tonight was Councillor Beck came and said very confidently and supported by the officers that no decision has yet been made, and that for me is crucial. Say sometimes in some of these consultations that's not always the case, but I hopefully had a warm feeling tonight that is the case, actually, that no decision has yet been made, and that's really important to all of us. So yeah, going forward, I'm happy to support this moving forward, and that it goes to the next stage. Just one point going forward, I am keen that officers review the way the exercise is funded going forward and how much of the costs should be borne within the town council accounts. So if we could look at that for, I guess it will be the next stage now. Please can, I don't know if we can, if the committee agrees, that would be nice if that could be minuted. So, thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Thank you. Yes, I think the fact that in the appendix the headstock was inadvertently but welcomely counted twice rather illustrates the dilemma of that particular part of my ward, that it currently has sort of a double bubble level of governance. It has a very effective parish council from Littleton Hasdale Parish Council, but it also has 3 very effective councillors in the form of St Barnabas councillors who represent that area, who currently represent that area on Winchester's town forum. So they have been getting effectively 2 blocks of governance for the price of 1. And I think I've heard the various submissions from members of the public, and I hope they are reassured that the consultation is for all affected areas directly and indirectly, so that residents of Littleton and Headbourne Worthy and so forth will also have a chance to be part of this consultation and get their say, because I think that is absolutely vital that their views are included and included. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've appreciated the both the terms of reference. I wasn't a member of the working party, but looking through it, it seems very sensible, and the debate tonight has sort of cleared up a few, highlighted a few things. I would say that the rationale for me for including parished areas that are not currently, part of the unparished area of the city is sort of self-evident from the map on page 29 in Appendix B. And some knowledge of the history of what's happened to Winchester since those lines were drawn on the map and the development that's subsequently gone on. As we are undergoing this process anyway, as part of the government reorganisation, and this being the current state of the map, I think it makes sense to ask these residents and ask people who are affected if these changes make sense. And everything that I've heard from the meeting, and everything, just to reassure people from outside the meeting, everything that I've seen in this committee, in this council, there are no vested interests. There are no, Winchester City Council plan versus a parish plan. This is just to see, as we're doing this exercise anyway, this is just to see what the people in those areas think, and would it be prudent to make changes now, as changes are coming, whether we like them or not, given the changes that have been in place. I also didn't hear Councillor Becker say that voters would be ignored in terms of the analysis of any feedback we get. Rather, she wouldn't be drawn, and again, I don't think we should be drawn, certainly not in the terms of reference, as to how we will interpret what are largely quantitative results that we hear from people. And we don't want our analysis to be sort of straitjacketed at this point by this committee. It is an iterative process and ongoing. So all that being said, then I do support the terms of reference. Like I say, we need to now go out there and educate, listen to, put the information, factual, neutral information out there, and hear what our residents have to say about all this. One final point, just to the comms team as well, that to follow on from something Councillor Brophy said. I'm also a parish councillor, and I also come across the confusion that the word parish brings around in terms, are we to do with the church? And I do wonder in the comms if it might be worth. I know again, parish/town has a legal meaning in the Act, but whether focusing on town council as or even city council as something with which we engage with residents might be a little less confusing than parish unparished. Just.
If I could just come in quickly on that point, I mean, as a matter of law, when a council is first created, it's automatically a parish council. It can only have its name changed to a town council by resolution of its first meeting, if that makes sense. So it has to come into being first.
Understood. Yeah, I know there are legal processes, but just in terms of understanding, it might be helpful.
No, that's understood.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Goldsmith. Sorry.
Yes, I suppose I'm slightly an outsider in all this, in Alresford, and we already think everything's too Winchester-centric. However, I'm very happy to support this. I am quite pleased that there's going to be a consultant who's going to interpret the results, because I think there's going to be a certain amount of confusion. And as I mentioned earlier on with the local town plan, when they started consulting with using more modern means of consulting rather than letters and so on. They did get a different demographic, and I think that's very important. You know, that you don't get things swayed by loud voices, and in lots of other, I'm sure you've experienced it elsewhere, lots of other situations in life, you find that some people do shout considerably larger than others and may not necessarily form the majority. So I'm very pleased at having a neutral party to try to make sense of all of this, but I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pat.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, clearly the consultation is worth doing. The terms of reference are nearly fit for purpose. I think with the inclusion of the points of clarification we've elicited tonight from Mr. John and others, that of course are now a matter of public record, I feel comfortable that we're doing a useful thing, the right thing. So happy to support the recommendation at this stage. And I just point out that it's reassuring to know that although Upper Meon Valley is usually considered to be the further flung elements of Winchester, we do actually appear on the map there as being next door to St Michael's.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Cunningham? Did you all quite happy? Right, so we move on to the recommendations. 1, to approve the draft terms of reference for the community governance review. Right. Sorry, Councillor.
May I just check? I was unfortunately a few minutes late arriving. Should I be voting or not?
Yes, I think. Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are we giving the Director Legal authority to make the minor changes he agreed to make to the terms of reference?
Yes.
And we confirm
That's what it says in item.
And making sure that we are going to see differences. Thank you.
That's recommendations. 1, to approve the draft terms of reference for the community governance review of the City of Winchester town area as set out in Appendix 1. 2, approve the indicative timetable for the review and as outlined within the terms of reference. 3, delegate authority to the Director Legal to make any minor amendments to the terms of reference prior to publication, to determine the specific date of its publications and to initiate the first stage of the public consultation. I think that covers that. All those in favour? That's unanimous.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that's the end of tonight's business. Thank you very much for coming. And thank you for the parishes for coming along.